Hey guys, it's Pelican here and welcome to my Stamsorc solo PvP build setup for the Scalebreaker patch. Out of all the stam classes I've tried this patch, Stamsorc is definitely my favorite. It has everything that a solo PvP build needs: sustain, mobility, burst damage, as well as healing. In this build video, I will be going through and explaining what to run on this setup as well as any alternatives that you can use. Without further ado, let's get into the build. So firstly, I'll be going through my gear setup. I'm in a heavy armor build and I'm running 2-piece bloodspawn, 5-piece warrior's fury, 5-piece sword singer on my front bar only, and on my back bar I'm running the blackrose dual wield. Those of you who are familiar with my build know that I always run bloodspawn, and there's a good reason for that. It is the best 2-piece solo PvP set in the game in my opinion. It gives you stam recovery, which is always helpful. And when you're under a lot of pressure, it gives you an enormous increase in survivability as well as ultimate regen. And on this build, ultimate regen is especially good because not only do we get reduced ultimate cost as a sorcerer, I'm also a red guard and I'm using a weapon ultimate. So originally this ultimate only cost 150 and now it only costs 119. And with bloodspawn, you can use this ultimate very often. Next up is Fury. Now Fury got changed quite a bit this patch. Some see it as a nerf, others see it as a buff. I see it as a bit of a nerf, but in my opinion it's still the best solo PvP set out there. It gives you up to 600 weapon damage and it procs off any damage taken now, meaning that this will essentially proc on cooldown and you can have a very high uptime on the max stack. Next up is Sword Singer. Now I run this on my front bar only because my attacking bar is my 2-hand. It gives you an enormous increase in weapon damage for your 2-hand abilities. And 2-hand abilities include Dizzy Swing, your Rally, your Executioner, as well as your Ultimate, and also your light attacks. Now many people do not know that Sword Singer actually increases the heal of your Rally, and that's because it applies directly to the two-handed skill itself. So that's another reason to run this set instead of another set such as Automaton. On my back bar, I'm running blackrose dual wield. This in my opinion is best in slot for any stam solo PvP build right now. It gives you an enormous increase in resistance whenever you cast your blade cloak, and blade cloak actually got a cost reduction this patch. It's very cheap now, so you can use this a lot and get a very high major protection uptime. Now one thing people might ask is whether you need to have the perfected version, and in my opinion it's good to have the perfected version, but it's not necessary. You don't lose much not having the 129 stam recovery. For my armor traits, I'm running all impen, and for my enchantments, I'm running all tri-stat except for one small piece. This will put me at around 27k HP in 0 deal. Depending on your preference for max HP, you can decrease or increase the number of tri-stat glyphs that you run, but I don't recommend dropping below 26k HP, otherwise you will be too squishy. For my jewelry, I'm running a robust+mag recovery. The reason I run mag recovery is because I streak and dark deal a lot, so I feel like this really helps me, but if you don't, you can always swap this out for weapon damage. For the other two jewelry, I'm running infused weapon damage. One of the main advantages of being a Stamsorc is that the class has a ton of sustain by itself, so you barely need to build any sustain at all. Next up, for my front bar, I'm running a maul with nirn trait. You might be wondering why I'm running a maul if I'm using a berserker rage. That's because I feel like the overall damage that it gives because of Dizzy and Execute will be better than a great sword, but you can always swap maul out for great sword if you want. I think it's not that much of a difference. Besides, if you have the other morph instead, which is onslaught, I think a great sword will be better for that. I run nirn because not only does it benefit my damage, it also benefits my rally heal. And for my enchantment, I'm running a disease to give the enemy minor defile. You can always swap this out for other enchantments such as shock for minor vulnerability, or you can also run a poison such as a double dot poison or the escapist poison. Now on my back bar I'm running a blackrose dual wield. The reason I'm running dagger is because I already have them and I didn't want to farm for access. The benefit of dagger is that it increases your heal because it increases your crit chance, but access will definitely be better because you are using rending slashes, and I think that quick cloak can also proc the axe bleed. So use access if you have them. I'm running a absorb stam enchantment. As always, you can always swap this out for another enchantment. And for my offhand, I'm running an infused weapon damage. The reason why it's so good is because quick cloak can proc it even when you're on your front bar, so it will always keep the enchantment up and increase your healing as well as your damage. Next up, I'll be going through my skill setup. On my front bar, I'm running Hurricane, Dizzying Swing, Rally, Streak, Executioner, and Berserker Rage. Hurricane will be your main defensive ability. It gives you your major resistance as well as some movement speed, and it also does increasing damage over time to nearby enemies. This damage is important because it will proc your crit surge healing constantly, so do remember to keep this skill up, and it might be hard to keep up sometimes because it doesn't last very long. Next up is Dizzying Swing. This is your main DPS ability. It is both a spammable as well as a burst, and it's probably one of the best, if not the best, DPS skill for stam builds in PvP. It might be a bit hard to get used to landing Dizzying Swing at first, but with some practice you will be able to get the hang of it. Unfortunately, Dizzy is getting nerfed next patch, but for now it's still best in slot, so I will highly recommend running it. Next up is Rally. Now you might be wondering why I'm running Rally on a heavy build with no snare remover, and that's because I feel that this build has enough mobility to not need a snare remover. This build has minor expedition from Hurricane, it has Streak for mobility, major expedition, as well as the Red Guard snare remover passive. Snare reduction passive. And on top of that, snares have been getting a lot of nerfs recently. Most snares now are only about 30 to 40%, and they usually only last about 4 seconds. The only time you will have trouble with snares, in my opinion, is when you are fighting Templars, because their jabs do 70% snares for 2 seconds, but even that's getting reduced next patch. And on top of that, Rally has an insane amount of healing. As you can see, my 2-tip maxes out at around 16k, and that's without Fury or the weapon damage enchantment. You can easily get Rally crits for over 10k, and I once even got a crit heal for 17k. When I first started Stamsorc, I was running forward momentum, but after I swapped to Rally, I realized my survivability increased a lot, and my mobility did not change much because of how ineffective most snares were on me. Next up is Streak. This is one of the defining skills of Sorcerer. It is both a mobility as well as an offensive skill, and you can also use it defensively. Streak got a bit of a buff this patch, but I feel like the buff is more for magsorc, because Stamsorc still can't really spam Streak like a magsorc can. I won't recommend casting it more than twice in a row because it will really drain your magicka. And I like to use Streak to counter people that block a lot, get away from zergs, or simply just to stun a group of enemies to get more breathing space. The last non-ultimate skill is Executioner. Executioner also got a buff this patch. It can deal up to 400% more damage now, which is insanely high. You can easily one-shot most people under 30% with this skill. And this is one of the main reasons why I feel like I don't really need Onslaught, because the follow-up damage from Executioner is already so high that having the extra pen isn't really necessary to secure the kill. Lastly, for my ultimate is Berserker Rage. As explained before, I have reasons for running this over Onslaught. I feel like the resistance and CC immunity that it gives me really helps me to secure the kill safely without fear of being bursted down myself. Of course, you can run onslaught over this, and if you are doing so, do remember to run a great sword instead. The cost of this skill is only 119 ultimate. That's because we have red guard and sword passive, and you can also use this skill defensively. If you feel like you're under a lot of pressure, you can just use this skill on someone and get the resistance and the CC immunity. One thing to note is also that this skill has a pretty strong AoE. I noticed that sometimes when I try to burst someone, I will unintentionally kill a squishy player nearby, so that's another benefit of this skill. And if you want to utilize the AoE effect of this skill more, you can also choose to swap Executioner out for reverse slice. For my back bar, I'm running Dark Deal, Rending Slash, Quick Cloak, Resolving Vigor, Crit Surge, and Temporal Guard. Dark Deal is your main sustainability. In fact, I think it's one of the best sustain skills in the game right now. It gives you a ton of stamina return as well as a pretty good heal, which can crit now. Do try to cast Dark Deal only when you're safe, such as when you're behind cover or have CC immunity up, because it can be fatal if you get interrupted mid-cast. Next up is Rending Slash. This is my damage over time skill. It's good to have a dot this patch in order to kill tankier targets. And I chose this morph over blackrose because I feel like the snare will really help me land my dizzying swings. And also because the initial hits harder. But you can choose to go blackrose instead. The heal on blackrose is actually pretty strong. And in fact, I think it's stronger than the old momentum heal. So that will really increase your survivability. Next up is Quick Cloak. Now I think that this skill is almost as important as Vigor on this build. It's got a cost reduction this patch. As you can see, it doesn't cost much now. And it gives you major evasion for 12 seconds, which increases your resistance against AoE damage. This is especially good this patch because this patch is so dominated by Templars and Wardens, and both of these classes rely heavily on AoE damage. So having this will really greatly increase your survivability against them. On top of that, Quick Cloak also constantly dishes out damage, which can also proc your crit surge, and most importantly, this damage will be keeping up your weapon damage buff on either of your bars. Furthermore, Quick Cloak also gives you major expedition for 4 seconds, so I like to use this as a mobility skill, paired up with Hurricane and Streak. This will make you a speed demon. And on this build, since I'm running blackrose dual wield, activating Blade Cloak also gives me 3 seconds of major protection. Essentially, my defensive rotation will be to cast Vigor first, followed by Quick Cloak, and then I will pop a Dark Deal if I can, or a Rally. Next up is Resolving Vigor. This is your main healing ability. It got both a buff and a nerf this patch. Although it costs less now and heals for more every second, it got its duration reduced by 1 second, which can greatly affect your playstyle since your window for attacking is now much smaller, and you have to cast this skill a lot more often. Next up is Crit Surge. This is your secondary healing. It got a 10% buff this patch, and it lasts quite long, so you don't have to cast it a lot. And it will be procced by your Rending Slash, Quick Cloak, as well as your Hurricane mainly. Another benefit of the long duration is that because Rally got a duration nerf this patch to 20 seconds, it will tend to drop off quite often, so having this as a backup for major brutality is always very good. And lastly, for my ultimate is Temporal Guard. In my opinion, this is the best ultimate for Stamsorc. The way this ultimate works, it goes very well with the high mobility of Stamsorc. You can use this to easily juke your enemies, and most importantly, when it's slaughtered, your damage taken is reduced by 8%. If you don't have the Siege skill line, you can always swap this out for Storm Atro. I would go the Greater Storm Atro morph. And one of the main benefits of having Storm Atronach instead is that you have the Daedric Protection passive on your back bar. Other than that, for my attributes, I'm running all points into Stam, and for the mundus, I'm running the Warrior, you can choose to run the steed instead for more mobility and HP recovery. For my food, I'm running the Artem takeaway broth. I feel like even after the nerfs, this is still the best food for Stamsorc, and in fact the nerf made it a lot cheaper and more affordable. For my potions, I'm running the Essence of Immovability. I'm running the ones that give me a crit. That's because that will benefit my crit surge a lot as well as my damage. And for my race, I'm a Red Guard. I think that Red Guard is the best race for any stam PvP build, especially builds that utilize a lot of weapon skills such as this one. And one of the main reasons I also chose Red Guard is so that I can get the snare reduction passive, which really helps me because I don't have a snare remover. Red Guard also gives you a lot of sustain back when you deal direct damage, and that will easily proc off your quick cloak as well as any other light attack or direct damage that you deal. Other than that, I would highly recommend running the add-on called Fury. It's literally just called Fury. It's a new add-on that is created this patch to help you track your Fury procs. So I would highly recommend downloading this add-on to keep track of your Fury. Lastly, I'll be going through my CP setup. For my blue tree, I'm running 49 into Blast, 72 into Master at Arms, 3 into Physical Weapon Expert, 72 Precise Strikes, 2 Thaumaturge, 37 Mighty, and the rest into Piercing. For my red tree, I'm running 66 Iron, 1 Spell Shield, 53 Resistance, 37 Hardy and Ally, and I'm running as much thick skin as Ironclad now, since dots are so overpowered this patch. And lastly, 7 quick recovery and 3 heavy armor focus. The green tree is entirely up to your own playstyle. For me, I run 40 into Warlord, 31 into Sprinter, 1 Siphoner to give Templars an additional thing to purge, 49 Mooncalf, 37 Tenacity. Now I would highly recommend putting points in the Arcanist if you do not have 1 mag recovery glyph like I do, but if you do, this point is completely unnecessary. And lastly, I have 72 in the Tumbling as well as 40 in the Shadow Ward. So that's all for the build. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I really enjoyed playing Stamsorc this patch, and I did say I was going to play Stam DK and Stam Dern. I tried both of them, but I feel like they are really lacking compared to Stamsorc, and next patch is just going to get worse. But on the other hand, I feel like magsorc is making a comeback again. This patch is actually really good. It's just get overshadowed by all the damage over time. But next patch, dots are getting nerfed hard, and magsorc is getting a lot of buffs. So I'll be going back to magsorc. I hope you guys are excited for that, and I'll see you guys in the next video.